Shalom, and welcome to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. This is a recording of a Shabbat sermon with Rabbi Rebecca Schatz.
Good relationships start with good communication. This isn't a chiddush. It's not a brilliant new idea that you're learning here for the first time. When we are in relationship with partners, family members, co-workers, even those helping us with our groceries, clear and kind communication is key. That, of course, does not mean that communication needs to always be positive. It can be clear and constructive, or clear and frustrated, or clear and demanding of another person. However, clear and kind communication is the only way to win another person's respect and their listening ear. In Martin Buber's book, I Am Thou, he defines communication through two fundamental opposing attitudes. I, thou, which is dialogue and presence and mutual recognition. And I, it, which is analysis and utility. Buber goes on to qualify the types of communication as needing presence and dialogue, equality and respect, and active listening. Using your whole being, Buber teaches, requires that communication engages the entire self to understand the other person. To be in relationship, we must utilize good communication through active listening and full presence. There are two places in this week's Parsha, Yitro, where we encounter this lesson. Once, when Yitro, Moshe's father-in-law, teaches him that leadership cannot be just doing everything alone. You must have mentors and colleagues and friends and those who know more than you and do things better than you do around to help you thrive and grow and succeed. Yitro is worried that Moshe will burn out by taking on all of the people alone. And Moshe listens. And he responds by taking the suggestion and growing through the steps to put this teaching into action. He doesn't always succeed, but he does continue to try. And the second example, I think, will surprise you. If I were to ask this room, and I've given you the answer already earlier today, what the most famous part of this week's Parsha is, you would all say, the Ten Commandments. And you would be partially correct. There are 10 sayings shared with us in this Parsha. And we have come to know them as the 10 Commandments. But in fact, they are not all commandments. Only the last 5, and some would say maybe number 3, are actual commands. You shall, etc. So why do we call them the 10 Commandments across major religions and in colloquial English? And why is it important to me that you understand that it is better that they are not commandments and rather elements of clear and kind communication from God to Moshe? The Aseret HaDibrot, the 10 utterances from God to Moshe to the people, are famously incorrectly translated as the 10 Commandments. However, Dibrot are far from commands. They are statements of good and clear communication. When Jewish texts were then translated into Greek in the centuries before the Common Era, the Aseret HaDibrot became the Decalogoi, the 10 words. I'm sure I'm saying that wrong. That's still pretty close to the original idea. But as those translations moved into Latin, logoi became mandata, commands. From mandata, we get commandments, which to us in Hebrew are mitzvot. Every interpretation is its own translation. So this switch mattered and has not only changed the language, but has changed the ethos of these 10 utterances. In Roman legal culture, mandata implied authority and hierarchy and enforcement, order and compliance. And as Christianity adopted these texts and emphasized law as something to be obeyed or broken with consequence, that framing became dominant in Western imagination. Judaism never stopped calling these 10 statements dibrot. But living often in conversation with Christian societies, we absorbed that language too And over time, as you all shared just a moment ago, 10 commandments became the common shorthand. Therefore, the shift from dibrot, utterances, to mitzvot, commandments, isn't just linguistic. It's spirit of understanding. It reflects two very different theological instincts. One, mitzvot, defines revelation as legislation. The other, dibrot, reminds us of revelation as communication in relationship. And when we recover the original language, we recover something essential about Jewish tradition itself. Law in Jewish tradition is not separate from relationship. An obligation is born out of encounter and communication, not coercion. Divine speech, divine relationship between God and human beings, between values and law, between faith and action. The first of God's 10 statements is an introduction, again, an invitation to remember and connect based on who God is and how Moshe and the people have experienced God. I, Adonai, am your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, the house of bondage. In 2026, this would sound like, good morning, my name is Adonai, and I am here today to express the ways in which I believe we can work best together, recalling back to a time that we were already in partnership. Not a command, but a welcoming into familiar territory. God then continues with 9 more statements of brit, of covenant in this relationship. Lo yeh lecha Elohim acherim al panai. If this statement were to come out of a relationship guidebook, it would read, quote, if we are going to be in this together, we are exclusive and you will have no other partners than me. This holiness in partnership is sacred, and God wants us to know that. And everyone will have access to that unique relationship, but each one of us is distinctly between just the human and God. In order for God to set boundaries for this relationship, the next 2 pieces of communication are ways to understand that closeness. They are firm and they are kind. No images or idol worship, and no swearing falsely in the name of me, God. God continues in this moment of bonding with Moshe to explain ways that not only will their relationship grow, but also the connection with other human beings and oneself. Keeping Shabbat, honoring parents, not murdering, staying true to your partner, not stealing, not swearing falsely against your neighbor, and not allowing jealousy to cloud the gratitude for your own life. All of these guidelines can be easily mapped into our own encounters with those most dear to us. The core of our Torah is not obedience to commandments, but relationship with boundaries to create holy relationship. Aseret hadibrot is a powerful term to use rather than 10 commandments because it reminds us that the communication, that speech is alive with God and with partners and friends and those closest to us in our life. A command is often said and then expected to be followed and checked off, so to speak. However, a conversation, especially with someone close to you, lingers and echoes and demands reflection and expects response maybe verbally or through action. Perhaps this is why in rabbinic interpretation, everyone heard the Torah during Revelation the way they needed to hear it. The speech was alive and being reflected upon and digested by each person in their relationship to those holy words, uniquely. And I would argue that those words are still alive and being reflected upon today. So the Aseret Hadibrot are a conversation that lives within us, rather than a checklist of items to make sure we accomplish something. We learn and share and teach these words Lador Vador for each and every generation. But we hold on to them and interpret them and follow their guidelines differently in each generation, sometimes for the better and sometimes with room for growth. May we this Shabbat hear these 10 statements of conversation as clear and kind, guidelines for our way forward in relationship with God and one another. Am I hearing my call clearly? Am I aware of the reflection upon statements that I have not yet experienced or challenged myself with? Am I listening to holy words said all around me? Am I sharing with kind and clear communication to grow relationships, or am I tasking with commands to accomplish a goal? Are my relationships I-it or I-thou? May we all hear the Aseret HaDibrot as a reminder of our relationship with God and Judaism and one another. And may we continue to revel in the revelation of Torah as we grow and strive to hear our calling towards a conversation of living Judaism and deepening spiritual closeness.
You've been listening to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. If you enjoy these podcasts, we invite you to write a review on the Apple Podcast website or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information on Temple Beth Am, Los Angeles, please visit www.tbala.org.